Ladies and gentlemen, it's Chris at Lion Punch Forge. It's been a while, but today we're going to do something kind of awesome. We're going to take a ring that I've been kind of showing off on Facebook and Instagram and those places, and we're gonna show how to make it. So we're gonna do a multi-part series. Today's part's going to be forming the petals, and we'll go through the basics of how to form the petals, attach them to the shank, form the shank, and then we're going to do some embellishment with leaves and stuff too. So I've already compiled components that are sort of ordered for this ring, because this is a ring that somebody has pre-ordered. And we're going to basically make this guy. This one is all sterling. I can also set do a prong setting in the center and set a stone for the ring. So my finger right here is pointing towards what should be the opposite side of the screen where the subscribe button is. So before we get too started in here, I'll go ahead and explain that. You guys want to see more of what's going on with Lion Punch Forge? Check us out on YouTube, which is what you're watching right now, and hit that red subscribe button down in the lower right hand corner. Also hit the bell settings if you'd like to be notified when I do a new video. And then also we are on Instagram and Facebook. So here we go. I've compiled these components. She wants a dragonfly ring shank, so I've got that all pressed out. And then I've made a couple different options for leaves for embellishments. My petals are cut out already from pancake dies, but if you don't have pancake dies, sawing petals out is just fine. You can print something off the internet and get perfect designs for petals to saw out. So what I've selected is basically 3 different size petals, and I'm showing leaf kind of, I was thinking about engraving those, but I probably won't this time. But I've picked 3 different petals, and all 3 petals are just slightly smaller than each other, the smallest one being the center, where I'll probably end up setting a stone or just putting a balled up piece of silver. So this guy is going to be a ton of fun because it looks really complex, but in essence it's not. It's a very simple design that is pretty easy to accomplish if broken down into simple steps. So that's kind of what we're going to do today, is just break it down into some simple steps and have you guys watch and make it easy for you. So we're going to go ahead and show you that. Like I said today, forming the petals. So we've covered this technique in a couple other videos on how to form petals, but to save you the time of having to go through and watch all those videos again, which I do recommend because they're pretty amazing. So, I mean, if I don't say so myself. But what we're going to do is we're going to want to layer the petals of the flower. So I'm drawing a line to represent my saw cuts. My saw cuts are going to start isolating a little bit more of the petal material as I do my hammer texturing, and that's going to allow one petal to layer under the other one when I start doing my hammer texturing. Because when you hammer metal to texture it or move it, it doesn't disappear. You don't make it smaller. You end up moving it. So in order to move it this time, I'm showing off a little cross-peen hammer. I'm going to use the cross-peen hammer to basically kind of hammer in the center and then fan out toward one side. This is one that I made out of an old file. Works perfectly. This is one that you're probably guys more used to. Something similar to this is that all these are cross peens. They all do the same thing. They're just a little bit different sizes, and depending on what you want to do, you can have more weight or less weight or something unique. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the hammer, and where I've drawn those lines in the center of the petal, we're going to start there and then move toward one side. But the petal that's next to it, we're going to bend that up slightly so that as we're texturing the metal, we're moving that metal underneath the other petal. So layering them. That's going to be readily apparent as soon as we start doing our dapping. Our dapping is going to further layer those petals next to each other, and that saw cut is going to assist in that happening. So basically I'm going to take my cross beam right where that line is, and I'm going to just move it over. I want to kind of push the metal underneath the other petal, and I'm going to thin it out. And if it gets wispy or thin on the end, that's okay, because what I'll end up doing is looking at pictures of flowers, go out in the garden and looking at flowers, and sometimes insects get a hold of them, sometimes the wind or the rain or the hail ends up damaging them. So not all the time they're perfect. This doesn't have to look perfect. The idea is that it looks natural. So texturing like this will help you get a natural looking flower, because that's even more awesome. So let's go ahead and go over to the anvil, and we'll go ahead and do this. Okay, here we are at my block anvil. I have it on a race bearing so that you'll see it kind of move around and move as I need it to move. It just kind of circles like a big circling vise, only it's an anvil. What I'm doing right here is, just as I explained before, I'm hammering in the center of the petal and then bending the one next to it up so that metal will move underneath the petal next to it. And I'm only doing one side because I want the other side to layer over it. And you'll see how I isolate that in a minute. I made a slight mistake during hammering here where I didn't go anneal my metal first, but I didn't want to take a break and go do that. So the metal's moving a little bit slow, kind of hard to bend with the fingers, but as long as you don't overwork it, you're not going to crack it, you're not going to do any of that kind of stuff. So pay attention to what your metal tells you. Your metal will tell you if it's getting too hard, if it's hard to bend. It starts to get really glossy and shiny as you hammer on it. This is just something that you end up learning and getting used to as you're starting to metalsmith. So these guys are going to be all kind of bent up and layered underneath. Before I do the other side though, I am going to take a break and anneal them. So in case you didn't notice, this is time lapse. I don't really hammer that fast. And I didn't find it necessary for you guys to completely watch the entire process in regular speed. So this is me just kind of readjusting, and I'll use the side of my anvil to isolate a part of material that I want to try and texture, hammer, or move. So that works really well. Recenter the anvil here. I've annealed. You can see the different color on the metal now. And this is nice and soft. And so I'm, like I said before, I'm using the side of the anvil to isolate that petal from the other one so that I'm kind of protecting it from anything happening. That's where a square anvil block comes in really handy. So we're doing the same thing here, only on the other side of the petal, making sure that it layers over the one next to it. We're just kind of working backwards from what we had worked before. Let's see. Yeah. You see how the ends of the flower start to become kind of wispy and natural? That's kind of what we want. All these guys will be textured out, and when they're layered, they'll look super awesome. The small center flower I did not texture because it's going to be used as a cup in the center of the flower arrangement. So that cup is either going to hold a prong setting or it's going to hold a balled up piece of silver that's been textured or engraved. I didn't want to ruin that, and you'll see me dap. Sorry, I do lapidary as well. So dopping and dapping are similar sounding words, and I do both, and I get the words mixed up. So please forgive me. Don't judge. Here we are, just working on the little guy now. And now we have some pretty layered looking. If you look at that top one on the anvil right now, it kind of looks like a propeller. That's exactly what we want. There we go. Here we are at the dapping block, and I'm going to be taking the dapping punches and pushing them down in the center. Now I'm putting the texture on the upper side of the flower, so the upper side should be textured, and I'm going to be using the dapping punches to push that texture down into the mold here, or dapping block, or whatever you want to call it. All technical terms. So I'm getting it kind of rough form right now so it'll fit nicely in one of the other cups that's a little bit smaller, and then I'll just move from cup to cup to cup. You'll see the center of the flower start to get kind of shiny. That's a good indication that your metal's starting to get a little bit hard. And I'm not going to do a whole lot of forming on this, so I'm not too worried about it getting hard at this point. But before I move on to the next step, it's not really going to be necessary to anneal because I'm going to be drilling, and it's easier to drill harder material. And then I'm going to be soldering, which is going to just soften the metal anyway. So here we are, just kind of pushing them down. You see those petals, that saw cut now is allowing those petals to layer each other, and that's giving the ability to do that. If that saw cut wasn't there, it would be one solid piece of metal, and you'd basically just be making a dome, and you wouldn't have that layering. That layering is what it makes it look real. So we move into a smaller punch here. I'm just using a brass hammer and trying not to hit my camera while I'm at it, because I've done that a few times. And we're just going to move down progressively until I get to about the right size. The person who ordered this one wants a slightly smaller flower than on the other ring, so I've picked some smaller flowers, and I'm going to dap them in a bit smaller than I did the other ring. So once I get done with the soldering and onto the ring shank, then I can move on to kind of forming the petals a little bit more with pliers. And that's going to kind of make them look a little bit more natural. It's going to kind of help with the layering of the ring, but that's not gonna come until probably after the leaves and everything else is soldered on. And in the next video, we're going to talk about soldering, specifically dropping flowers on the anvil there. Specifically, planning your solder stages, because you know you have hard solder, you got medium solder, easy solder, and extra easy solder. I don't like using easy and extra easy on a new project. I like saving those solders for repairs or that kind of stuff. So what I end up doing, and I'll explain this in the other video in a little bit more depth, is that I will make components that are all soldered together with, say, hard, and then put them together using a medium solder. So if that makes any sense. Here we go, just forming those petals, and we will go ahead and show you what they look like when they're all done here. I'm gonna kind of fast forward and show you the little guy, and we'll go do that. All right, we got our little fella here, and see, he's not textured like we talked about before, and I'm just gonna cup him out. Just tiny little cup, and he's gonna go in the center of the arrangement, the beautiful flower arrangement ring. And he's, same thing, annealed, just doming him out. You'll see him kind of get stuck a little bit in one of the smaller holes, and I'll just take my brass hammer and kind of tap the edges of the hole, and he'll pop and slide right out. Try and get this, there you go. It's hard to see with the anvil and the hands and that kind of stuff. There's the tapping, kind of getting him loosened up and recentered. And yeah, that should be about right. Get him out, he looks good. We'll put him in the center of the ring, and there you go. That's your arrangement. And we're just gonna center punch those right in the middle and then drill our hole. And in the next video, we will talk about soldering, getting it all soldered together, arranging it, and then maybe some easy steps toward attaching it to the ring shank as well. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Stay tuned, there'll be more to this video series, and I hope you guys had fun, and I appreciate you watching. Remember, hit the subscribe button down in the lower right hand corner, and if you'd like to, also hit that bell button so you know exactly when I do a new video. If you haven't already, I know there's a lot of things to do. Check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and yeah, I appreciate you, and you guys have a great day.